Life is Art is dedicated to bringing you insightful commentary on art, culture, and life. To support the podcast, feel free to make a monetary donation or purchase our official Life is Art merchandise at the link in the description. Your donation helps us to reach a wider audience and helps us to gain traction in the world of social media. Thank you for your viewership and support. Life is Art. Art moving at the speed of life. Life moving at the speed of art. So I just put out a lighthearted video with a very, very good friend of mine, Marianne Lomby, and she's an incredible performance artist as well as a visual artist. And we have a couple of things in common. We both traveled the route of being a community-minded artist, and we both had the same highs and lows. And we actually met during I think a presentation I was giving either at OU or someplace, either OU or in Tulsa. I can't remember where it was, but we've been friends for many, many years. And the parallels between us almost brought each of us to ending our art careers because we were left in this weird, no man's land of, a certain realization. I think we romanticize being an artist sometimes, and we assume that the work that we do is going to take care of us, especially if you're a community-oriented artist. And because you leave it to fate, sometimes fate leaves you in the dust and you're left with nothing except broken expectations. I was running an arts organization that was dedicated to racial and cultural diversity in Oklahoma. And she was involved in performance pieces that dealt with um, race and equality. And she's best known for her presentation in Tulsa, The Very Ambitious Color Lines. Well, we assumed that these contributions would be, um, if anything, even if these endeavors ended, they would be things that we would be remembered for. And unfortunately, because the world changes and cities change and just things change, we found ourselves at a crossroad, not necessarily knowing what we were going to do with art, or even if we wanted to do art again. And we both had our individual ways of figuring that whole conundrum out. And I'm happy to say that both of us as individuals have found our um, we found our groove. I think each of us has found our own individual groove again. And although our paths were different, we we came together to do a podcast, and it was very lighthearted. It was at first I was going to say no to her. She wanted to see this exhibit. I think it was called the I can't remember what it was, but it was at the National Western Heritage Museum, formerly the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And I thought to myself, okay, this is a good opportunity to get this podcast in. I was going to say no because when I hear the words cowboy and Western art, I immediately run for the hills. And my apologies to anyone who is a fan of that art form. I I did go and we did see the exhibit. And I think we both walked away a little astounded, not necessarily because the art was good, because Marianne, being who Marianne is, she can pick holes through just about anything. And she's if you ever want your work critiqued, honestly, she's the person to go to. Well, something happened that was unexpected. While we looked at the various paintings with cows and horses and the usual suspects, while we were walking around, we saw something. There were two things that we saw. We saw the multitude of dots denoting art that was sold. and we noticed the price of each of these pieces that was sold. Now, granted, a lot of these artists are more than likely renowned, or they have some renown that neither one of us have. So you have to look at that objectively. Um, I noticed a difference. In addition to the number of dots on the purchased inventory, I noticed the prices. Some of these pieces were priced in a way that I just couldn't fathom. I couldn't understand. $150,000 for a piece sold, $42,000 for a piece sold. And I believe that was what initially drew Marianne to even wanting to go. She's by no means a fan of country or Western art either. But that was very intriguing. I think one of her students um, told her about the prices, and she was kind of like, "Wait a minute, why are they? What's going on here?" So that turned into a secondary conversation, and for the first time in a in a long while, we were both enthralled by something. It wasn't necessarily the prices and the monetary part of it, although that was a component. It was the fact that the patrons of that kind of art invested in their artists in a way that people with less traditional, more contemporary visions wished that their so-called patrons would. And I guess the higher up you go, you do find the patronage, in a more lucrative situation. But what I felt there, and I was, walking amongst the people, everyone was, they were friendly. There was nothing aloof about them, and you could tell old money. You could see old money. But their genuine love of that form of art was something that we felt in that room. And I have to say, in contemporary circles and galleries, I don't feel the love anymore. I feel the party, I feel the gathering, but I don't feel any reverence for the work. I don't feel anyone, rather I don't feel anyone feeling or emanating reverence for the work. And sadly, most of our contemporary artists in the circles that Marianne and I know, most of those circles, they don't come to purchase. They come for the fellowship. They come for everything but the art. And this is no indictment on the I guess I don't know what to call it. I can't, the contemporary art community in my city. Um, but it does illustrate that there is a difference of aura when it comes to the connection to the artist. While I may, used to make jokes about, Western art, and I would say things like, "So what are you going to paint today? A goat?" And I would poke fun at it. I can't dismiss the energy that was in that room. And I'm sure that artists of um, a similar standing, a similar uh, renown as Marianne and myself, they probably, are dealing with an audience that has the same monetary constraints. But what I wonder is is this reverence strictly because they were higher tier artists, or is this reverence because the genre itself is loved? And we both said, "Hey, we're going to look and see who's selling what and who's supported by who as far as being a working level um, Western artist, Western style artist." Well, I'll have to get back with you on that because I haven't had a lot of time to do the research, but, that's probably gonna be the next podcast. The other thing that we walked away with is that place had a very definite idea of what art was, whether it was a sculpture or whether it was a painting. And I think sometimes art that's honest is is art that embraces a certain simplicity, and there's no question as to what it is. When you leave, if you leave with the painting from there, if you leave with the sculpture from there, you're leaving with something that is committed to be what it is. And I think over I don't even know if it's a word, over subjectifying work causes it to become something that's undefinable. And I think sometimes without definition, the idea of value isn't there. And I think this is really bad for people that are performance artists, people that do installations and things like that, because a lot of times with people coming strictly for the party, they fail to embrace the value of the idea. And most of them don't want to monetarily contribute to the value of the idea. And I believe a lot of conceptual artists understand that. And I think that they're resigned to that. They're committed to what they do, and that's to be respected. But many times I walk away from art exhibitions thinking to myself, am I the only one who's not in on the joke? Is what's being created even being taken seriously by the artist? And I'm talking about the more contemporary works. Are we truly making something that sparks a desire to want to walk away with it, to spark the desires of a patron? I think being non-committal to what art is has hurt us to a degree. And, again, everything shouldn't be weighed in terms of monetary value. But ultimately, when a person shows the utmost regard and respect and reverence for your work, it usually is in the form of a monetary transaction, because there's nothing else that they can do. They can say kind words all day, but the ultimate act of an investment is when a person parts with something that's valuable to them, i.e., money, for something that they find even more valuable, your art. I felt that in that room, that the art was more important than money, and that is why there were so many blue dots on those pieces, on those paintings and sculptures. I've never been in a room where there were so many. More art was sold than was not sold. In all my years of being an artist, I've never seen anything like that before. So what started as, okay, I'll go because I want to do this podcast, ended with something being um, spiritually affirming, to be perfectly honest. I think sometimes we get away from the basics of art to make statements. And I would never tell an artist to stop striving. I mean, I think both sides of the coin are correct. I'm merely just addressing something that I had lost many years ago. And that was being awestruck by the act of creating itself. Many of the paintings there, if I were to break them down, were very basic, were very, um, they were not, the composition wasn't great. We both agreed that some of the compositions in the works were questionable, if not um, just not very good. But they treat it almost like a hamburger. There's not very many hamburgers that are incredibly bad, and they all taste good. I think the love for that genre of art is so deep that they find value in anyone willing to create it, and I was humbled by that. I would love to see that in the, Oklahoma, contemporary art scene. I would love to see that just in the contemporary art scene, period. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm gonna go and start trying to mimic things, but I am going to take a page from that book, and I am going to remember to love creating again. This is your guy, the brave artist, having come back from a an exhibition that I was not really expecting to affect me the way that it did. I think we're going to be doing some podcasts from time to time, where we go on location and go to openings and and give our thoughts. So share, like, and subscribe if you like what we're doing here at Life is Art, and if you want to see more guests drop in, such as Marianne, and kind of get back to that format. Um, Let me know your comments and your thoughts, and share, like, and subscribe, and let others know about this small but growing arts channel. Until the next time, take care.